3 months before our wedding. My fiancée sat across from me, at a little cafe on 17th Avenue. And told me she'd fallen in love with my brother. My parents sat me down the next morning and said I should be the bigger person. When I refused, I told them I wasn't going to stand at an altar and watch the two of them get married like it was something worth celebrating. My father handed me a letter from the family's lawyer, official, signed. I was cut out of the Muskoka cottage, removed from my grandfather's trust, severed from the family property company entirely. Everything in a single envelope. 6 months later they were pounding on my door. Before sunrise. Voices cracking, my mother crying so hard she could barely form words. Because someone had just handed the financial authorities a folder thick enough to end 30 years of my father's career overnight. I'm not sure where to start. So I'll just go from the beginning. My name's Grant. I'm 33. I work as a civil engineer in Calgary. Bridges, stormwater infrastructure, the kind of work where if you get it wrong, people notice in a very concrete way. I like the permanence of it. The idea that you build something solid and it stays. For a long time, I thought my personal life was heading in the same direction. I met my fiancée at a friend's wedding 3 years ago. She was the maid of honor. I was a groomsman. We spent most of the reception arguing about whether the speeches had run too long. She said yes, I agreed loudly, and by the end of the night we'd traded numbers. 3 years later, we'd moved in together, adopted a rescue dog, and put down a deposit on a venue outside Banff for a June wedding. I thought we were solid. I built things for a living. I knew what solid looked like. My brother came back from the States in the fall. He'd finished some kind of finance MBA in New York, and my parents could not stop talking about it. Every Sunday dinner, every phone call, my brother this, my brother that, his new job with a real estate development firm in Toronto, his connections, his portfolio. Meanwhile, I'm the one who actually stayed close. Who drove my father to 2 years of medical appointments while my brother was collecting credentials across the border. Somehow I was still just introduced as the one in Calgary. Not by my name. Not by what I'd built. Just the other one. At first, I was glad they got along. My fiancée wanted to eventually buy a rental property, something small to start. And my brother knew the market. Made sense they'd talk. When their conversations about cap rates and zoning bled into family dinners, I didn't read into it. I trusted them both completely. The alarm was subtle at first. Her using his name in contexts that had nothing to do with real estate. Your brother mentioned a great place near the distillery district. Your brother thinks I should look into REITs before the end of the fiscal year. Then him knowing details about her week that I hadn't shared. Small things. The kind you don't notice until you suddenly can't stop noticing. 3 months before the wedding, she asked me to meet at the cafe where we'd had our first proper date. I had a bad feeling before I even parked the car. She was already there when I walked in. Same table by the window. Couldn't quite look at me. She had her hands wrapped around a mug that was clearly already cold, just for something to hold. I can't marry you. She said it quietly like she was trying to spare me the echo of it in a public space. No build-up, no easing into it. I'm sorry, Grant, I'm in love with your brother. I sat down. I don't know why I sat down. I think I was waiting for the part where she said she was joking. But she wasn't. She slid the ring across the table. Gently, like she was handing me something fragile, and said she hoped I'd understand someday. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just sat there and watched her walk out. And I kept thinking about all the things I'd built over the past 3 years. And whether any of it had ever been as solid as I thought. My parents already knew when I called them that evening. Of course they did. My mother said, "These things happen, sweetheart. She and your brother are just very well matched." My father said, "It's painful now, but honestly, they make more sense together." Then 3 days later, they called with the news that the two of them were officially together. And to ask if I'd be my brother's best man at their wedding. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because what else do you do? You want me to stand up there? I said. While he marries the woman I was supposed to marry 3 months from now. My father's voice went firm. We want you to show this family that you're not going to fall apart over this. Think about how it looks if your own brother isn't standing beside him. There it was, not my grief, not my humiliation, the optics. I told him no. I told my mother no. I sent my brother a short direct message and told him no as well. Then I went quiet for a few weeks. Stopped answering calls. Stopped showing up to dinners. I needed the space to be angry without doing something I'd regret. They didn't give me the space. My parents showed up at my apartment, unannounced one Saturday morning. Let themselves into the lobby with the code I'd given them for emergencies. My father stood in the hallway, with that expression he wore when he'd already decided how a conversation was going to go, and said they needed to talk about the wedding. I told them that conversation wasn't happening. You're being childish, my mother said. Your brother needs you. My brother needs me, I repeated. And what did I need 3 months ago? My father stepped forward. You need to let this go. Your brother made a choice. Your fiancé made a choice. People fall in love. The question is whether you're going to let bitterness turn you into someone no one recognizes. I asked them directly. Did they know something was happening between the two of them? Before she called off the wedding? My mother looked at the floor. My father said, we thought it was just chemistry. We didn't want to stir up drama where there might not be any. So they saw it. They saw something developing and said nothing. They watched me plan a wedding for a year and said nothing. They let me walk into that cafe completely blind. That's not protecting me, I said. That's picking your favorite son and hoping I'd be too polite to notice. My father's jaw tightened. If you can't find a way to move past this for the sake of this family, then maybe you don't belong at the table anymore. I looked at him steadily. And what exactly happens if I don't? 2 weeks later, I had my answer. He came to my door alone this time, dressed like he was heading to a client meeting. He handed me an envelope with the same expression he used when he used to ground me as a teenager, like the verdict was already in, and he was just delivering the sentence. Inside was a letter from the family's law firm, my grandfather's trust, redistributed, my name removed. The Muskoka cottage, where I had spent every summer of my childhood, transferred entirely to my brother and his future wife. My stake in the family's property management company, signed over, both my parents' signatures at the bottom. I read it twice, then I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and handed it back to him. He looked surprised. I think he'd been expecting me to beg. Keep it, I said. You've made it very official. I hope it works out the way you're planning. He stood there a moment longer. Then he walked back to his car. My mother was in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, the way she always does when she's decided not to be held accountable for something. I shut the door, put the deadbolt on, stood in the hallway for a long time. My hands were shaking slightly, but underneath the shaking was something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was holding up a wall that was trying to fall on me. I'd let them take it all. And somehow that felt like the first honest thing that had happened in a year. I thought it was over. I really did think it was over. I woke up on a Tuesday in February at 5:45 in the morning to my phone going completely haywire. Not ringing, exploding. 86 missed calls. Over 100 texts. My mother, my father, my brother. The messages ranged from call me now, to pick up your phone, to my mother writing my name, over and over with increasing punctuation. Which is how I knew it was serious. Then the knock at my door. Not knocking, hammering. I made coffee first. I know that sounds calculated, but I had spent 6 months being yanked around by their definitions of what constituted an emergency. So I put the kettle on and let them keep hammering until I was ready. When I finally opened the door, all three of them were there. My father looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled in a way I had genuinely never seen before in my life. The man ironed everything, always. My mother's eyes were swollen. My brother looked like a man who'd watched a building collapse around him. Jaw tight, not quite focused. They pushed inside. My father started immediately. Someone submitted a full file to FinTrack. His voice was rough in a way it never was. The Provincial Real Estate Council too. They have the appraisals, the numbered company transfers, the offshore routing. A complete package. Someone put this together deliberately, and they want to know if you... I didn't do anything, I said. You had access to site infrastructure work. I never touched the financials, and you removed me officially, in writing 6 months ago. Why would I have any involvement in this? My brother had gone very still in the corner of the room. His face had changed. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the floor with an expression I'd never seen on him. Not exactly guilt, but something closer to the specific horror of a man who has just understood, too late, what actually happened. It was her, he said quietly. My mother turned to him. He ran both hands through his hair. After we got married, she kept asking about Dad's firm. Said she was proud, said she wanted to understand how we built it. I thought she was. I thought she genuinely wanted to know. I told her about the appraisal structures, the shell accounts in Vancouver, the BC transfers. I thought she was impressed. I thought that's what she wanted. The room went very quiet. My father's face went a color I don't have a word for. You told her. I didn't think she'd do anything. I thought she... You thought, my father said, very slowly and very carefully, that the woman who walked into our family through your brother, who married you within months, who asked detailed questions about every corner of our business model, you thought she was just proud of you. My brother grabbed his phone, dialed her, put it on speaker and set it on the coffee table. 4 rings. Then her voice clear and unhurried. It's early. My brother said, "The file that went to Fintrack. Was that you?" A pause. Not a long one. "Yes." My mother made a sound I hadn't heard her make before. My father gripped the back of the sofa. My brother said, "We were married. I thought you." "I know what you thought." Her voice didn't change. "Your father's firm destroyed a small residential developer in British Columbia 12 years ago. Ran him out of contracts using inflated competing bids, then acquired his assets through a numbered company when he went under. That developer was my father. He lost the business he'd spent 15 years building. He had a stroke 2 years later. He's been in assisted living since I was 22. A brief pause. "I've been putting that file together for 4 years. Your brother was my first point of contact. When it became clear he wasn't involved in the financial side of things, I needed a better source. You were very willing to talk." My brother's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I was a source. The commission has the purchase records, the bid documents, and 3 sworn statements from former employees. It's airtight. I made sure of that." Another pause. "I'm sorry it worked out the way it did for you. I'm not sorry for any of the rest of it." The line went dead. Nobody moved for what felt like a full minute. My brother sat down on the couch like his legs had simply stopped working. My father stood with his hand on the back of it, staring at nothing. My mother had stopped crying. She just looked tired. The way someone looks when they've finally run out of the energy it takes to maintain a particular version of things. I walked over to the door and held it open. "I think you should go," I said. "I genuinely hope things work out as well as they can from here. But I'm not part of this. Not your family, not the firm, not whatever comes next. You made that official 6 months ago. I'm taking you at your word." They filed out. My brother was last. He stopped in the doorway. I thought he was going to say something. He didn't. He just looked at me, really looked at me. In a way that might have been the most honest thing that had ever passed between us. Then he walked out. I closed the door, stood in the kitchen, and finished my coffee. The investigation moved quickly. My father's firm was suspended from operating within the week. 3 major clients cut ties in the first 10 days. By spring, he'd surrendered his real estate license rather than face formal proceedings. Which, in that industry, is more or less a public admission. The Muskoka cottage turned out to have some of its own complications, tied up in the same structures. Which I won't pretend I didn't find grimly satisfying. My mother's name stayed out of the headlines. But her world contracted sharply and permanently. My brother's marriage lasted exactly as long as it needed to from her perspective. She had what she came for. He found out the full shape of it in stages. Which I imagine was its own particular kind of painful. I got promoted at work. Senior project manager, leading a major stormwater infrastructure project that will outlast all of us. It kept me busy, which was what I needed. I bought a condo in a neighborhood I actually like. Not one chosen for resale optics or what it says to guests. I painted the main wall a dark green. That my mother would have called impractical. I bought a couch because I liked sitting in it. A few months later I met someone through a colleague. She's uncomplicated in the best way. She doesn't compete with anyone. She asks about my work because she's actually curious. Not because she's cataloging information. She laughed at something I said on our 3rd date and I thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Like nothing is being performed. There's a friend from work too. The one who called me every single week during the worst of it. Not to fix anything. Just to check that I was still standing. And there's a retired engineer in the unit above mine, who I keep running into on the bike path. Whose company I've come to genuinely value. In a way that snuck up on me completely. That's my family now. People who chose it deliberately. People for whom being in my life is not a door to somewhere else. Someone asked me not long ago whether I resented her, my former fiancée, for what she did. I thought about it before I answered. She used me. That's true. I was a point of access she walked through on her way to a different room. And when the room she needed changed, she moved on without looking back. That's not nothing. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen, or that it didn't cost me something real. But the family she took apart wasn't built on anything I'd have wanted to remain inside. Once I knew what it was made of. I just didn't know yet. The trust my father stripped from me was funded by deals that destroyed someone else's father. The cottage I grieved was bought on the back of 30 years of practices I never knew enough to question. My brother's closeness was always conditional on me staying in the supporting role he'd written for me without asking. She didn't take any of that from me. She just stopped letting me pretend it was solid. I still have the engagement ring. In a drawer somewhere. I've thought about what to do with it. And mostly I just don't think about it anymore, which I take as progress. It's just a ring. It doesn't carry what it used to carry. Neither does most of the rest of it. What I know now that I didn't know before. Solid isn't the same as permanent. You can build something that lasts and still walk away from it. When you finally understand what it was built on. That's not failure. That's just paying close enough attention. For the first time in a long time, I'm building something I actually want to keep. Thank you for being here and listening to the end. If this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference for this channel.